This is Bryce with Good Life Property Management. Going to go over setting the market rent for your property. So this is obviously a very crucial step in the make-ready process, and it's a bit of an art, but it also can be boiled down to a science. Property management companies in particular have a lot of tools at their disposal. So that's, if any step of the make-ready process should involve a manager, I highly recommend it's setting the market rent. Landlords, in my experience, that are the owners of the home that set the market rent themselves generally set it far too high and don't take into account a few crucial considerations. So going to go over some of the data that I actually use and give you a couple of resources to use as well as an individual landlord. So any good management company is going to have a management software that's able to pull from comparable properties pretty easily to give a high-level overview of similar rentals in the area. So for us here at Good Life, it's AppFolio, and this platform has what's called a rent match comparison, and basically it pulls from similar properties in the zip code that have actually rented, which is a crucial component when looking at comparative data. A lot of people look on something like Zillow or the MLS and look at properties that are actively being marketed, when this is a big mistake because we don't know what these properties are actually going to end up renting for. They could sit there for 30 days, 60 days before they're rented at that rental rate. So you want to find the sweet spot in between maximizing the rental income and minimizing the vacancy. So our software is very powerful in this regard. So as an example, I'm using our office address here in Claremont, 92117, as a 2-bed, 2-bath, 800 square feet, kind of a bread and butter kind of rental property. So I've put the advertised rent around $2,000. You can see the data is pointing to a median rental rate of around $1,950 for 2-bed, 2-baths in Claremont. So our data here we don't know exactly where they're located, the finishes of them, some of the amenities, like if they have a HOA with a pool, it's a detached home, stuff like that. So it's limited in that regard, but it gives us a really solid set of data to jump off from because it's data that's actually from rented properties. So really good place for us to start now. The property was more of a luxury property. I'd also turned to the MLS. This is San Diego's multiple listing service here. And what I've done is I've pulled a licensed agent can do this, any licensed agent, even if they're a sales agent, pull up residential rental properties and look at what has rented on the MLS. Now, you need to be careful with the MLS because a lot of properties go there when they're having a hard time renting rather than just right off the bat, especially if it's something like a kind of standard rental, like a 2-bed, 2-bath in Claremont. So the MLS is a lot more powerful for niche or luxury properties, especially downtown is when it's most useful, as there's a ton of comparable data in most every unit that's going on the rental market in downtown 92101 is going to be on the MLS. So it's a lot more data and a lot more reliable. So here in Claremont, I wouldn't use much of this data unless it was a model match or in the same community. Like if we had a community in this Balboa Arms community right down the road from our office, I would definitely be looking at these data. I would bring them up, look at the photos, look at some of the information the listing agent provided to make my recommendation based on those. Now, something that you can use as a landlord is Rentometer. It's a free software online, doesn't even require a sign up. You just enter your property's address, the market rent you want, and the number of beds. Hit analyze, and it's going to bring up data similar, really solid and reliable data because it's properties that have actually rented in a very tight radius, usually within a mile. And as you can see, it corroborates with our AppFolio average around 1950, and you can kind of see a percentile. So this is really useful. You don't need to be a licensed agent to use this, so highly recommend that platform. Something else to consider is the seasonality, especially if you're in a student market such as UTC or near SDSU. You really need to consider what time of year the property is becoming vacant. Unfortunately, if you're near UCSD or SDSU and it's the dead of winter, you're going to have to concede quite a bit, up to 15 to 25% in your market rent to find qualified tenants. However, if it's spring or summer, regardless of where you're at, you can really maximize your rental income and go for top of market and adjust accordingly. So huge factor, even in San Diego, the rental market is always strong. However, it is at the mercy of the season. So in the winter and fall, you need to concede at the very least 5% and probably north of that, depending on marketing activity. One last thing that you need to be wary of, but you can use as a resource, is our actives on public platforms like Zillow. It's a good place to look at what kind of gauge, get a temperature of the market and see how long properties are sitting. If you have a bunch of properties at a similar price point that have been on the market 2, 3, 4 weeks, that's an indication that there's a ton of supply and a lack of renters, and you're going to have to price your property aggressively to get it rented out. Now, if properties are at what you have in mind for top of market and they've only been on market a few days, that's a good indication the market is really strong in the zip code for similar properties. Just be sure when you're filtering that if it's a 2-bath, you have 2 baths on, or if it's a condo, make sure you take off houses. Just so that you're comparing apples to apples. It's brutal to take a comp into consideration when it's a completely different type of property. So I hope this video helps you guys out. For more, you can check out our free guide, Renting Your Property, Preparing Your Property for Rent, and the rest of our video series. Thank you.